Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Dale King Show, where we bring together interesting people in business to talk about things that matter to you. I'm your host, Dale King, and today I have Chris Myklebust. And Chris has been the Chief Transformation Officer for Canvas Credit Union since 2019. And before working for Canvas, he served the state of Colorado in several high-level regulatory roles from 2006 to 2017. He's a serial entrepreneur, and through his company, Picunity, did I say that right?
You said it great.
All right, Picunity, he has engaged diverse adventures over the years, and Chris has relentless passion for technology and finance and believes they can work together through emerging technology to improve financial conditions for people everywhere. So further, he's driven by his belief in nature's solutions for improving human condition and with improved solutions for human health, construction, energy, and conservation. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Hello, Chris. It's good to have you on the show.
Dale, I'm really excited to be on. Thank you so much for having me.
So I'm intrigued with this chief transformation officer. What is a chief transformation officer in a credit union?
If you were good at kind of going over the resume and talking about the fact that I was in regulatory roles, and the chief transformation officer for me is over a lot of risk. I do a lot of risk, like internal audit, enterprise risk management. I also do advocacy for the credit union, and I'm also very engaged in innovation, not so much with the chief technology officer and whatnot, but being involved in that. I love the technology. And basically, being a former regulator, when you get invited to podcasts like this, or you get invited to a party, if you say, "Hey, I'm the chief risk officer," a lot of times I can just see the eyes glaze over, and I worked with the CEO at the time, Todd Marksberry, and he came up with the title for me. He's like, "Hey, man, you can have your a little bit of hands in technology, a little bit of hands in the risk," and I've been thrilled to have the title and have these conversations.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, and then you also have Picunity, your business. Tell us about Picunity.
Okay. First, you did bring up Canvas Credit Union. I think it's important to
Sure.
let everybody know that I am not speaking in any way on behalf of Canvas
Absolutely.
Credit Union or anybody affiliated with them. So I thought I'd get that out of the way. I almost forgot. So Pecunity is my business, and I've had that for many years. It's gone through different renditions like Race to Retirement, and that's where I got to know you, is actually the early days of Pecunity, when I actually created a bullion silver coin and did some interesting things with decentralization of silver at that time, which is just kind of leads me into how excited I am about the technology of today.
Oh, very good. Very good. So where do you see things going with the economy, technology? It seems like everything is changing. It seems like all the norms of the 20th century are really on the block.
Yeah, I so agree with you. In fact, I would say the world has already changed.
Right.
It's just we as humans are we're trying to catch up now.
Right.
The economy, I tried in my early parts of my career to try and determine what the economy was going to do, where it's going to go. I stopped doing that. But what I can say is that I think it's very important to be prepared for whatever might come. So we know that there's inflation. I don't think that that's going to go away because of our deficits and money printing in this nation. So I think we're in for that. We need to be ready for that and plan for that. From a technology perspective, artificial intelligence, I think when we were preparing for this show, we were both just like talking about where is this going to go,
Right.
and, the regulations around it. It is super exciting times.
Well, and there's so much opportunity, and the economy is shifting. It's funny, people talk about things with a bit of doom and gloom, but there's doom and gloom in some of the things that are changing. However, there's always opportunity.
Absolutely. And so I'll let you in on a little secret. That's what I always loved about risk management, because while you're looking at mitigating some risks, opportunity in the portfolio of possibilities really present themselves. And so, um, let's talk about inflation for a second, if that's okay.
Yeah.
If we go back 10 years ago, and let's say there's a person, they're making $50,000 a year. They don't want to own any assets. Um, we have to kind of get into a time machine and go back there. But let's say they have the opportunity to buy a house at like $300,000. They're making 50 grand a year. Let's say, they're going to get a normal 3% increase in their pay at work, but they decide, hey, I don't want to own an asset. I just want to pay rent, go to work, manage my life.
Right.
But after paying taxes and things 10 years later, they have not, even if they've contributed 10% to a 401k, if they're making 50 grand over 10 years, they saved like $50,000 and they didn't buy a house. But had they bought a house 10 years ago, if you look at the math in most, major metropolitan areas, the value of that asset doubled over the last 10
Right.
years.
Right.
They didn't have to do any more work for that. It's just something that happened because of inflation. So you're so right about opportunity. Those are the kinds of opportunities that present themselves for everyone if they're, educated enough and not afraid to take advantage.
Right. Well, and I think uh, overcoming the discomfort with change is learning, and
Absolutely.
having mentors and having conversations. I've enjoyed our conversations because you've helped me see things differently than a lot of folks. I mean, you had mentioned printing money, but I think I mean, is can you actually print money, or is that just currency? And what's the difference?
I think most currencies, if we're looking at the currencies that by law we use in commerce every day,
Right.
those are government. It's the US dollar, those are Federal Reserve notes, and they are the property of the US government. And, we are obligated to pay taxes on that and whatnot. But the way I look at a currency because of inflation, it's kind of like carrying a bucket with water in it. Inflation is like putting a tiny hole in the bottom of that bucket. And over time, you want to use that water. It's been draining out over years. So
Right.
if you want to think about money, it's supposed to be a store of value. And a lot of times we think of our
Mm,
US currency as a store of value. And it might be on a short term basis, but I don't think it is on a long term basis. So money or something, it doesn't even have to be money. It could just be an asset that's going to maintain its value or increase in value over time.
right. Right. Well, I was thinking too about that bucket. If people keep coming back and making bigger holes,
I
that
know.
the bucket's going to drain. So, and the values. I mean, we see it today. Just going to the store, it's like I'm spending how much for food today? Used to be half that. Just not too long
There's a
ago.
great story about that. I don't know where it is, but it's fresh off. I just read it on the wire this morning. Somebody made a YouTube video where just a few years ago they went to Walmart and they paid like 177 bucks for their basket of goods that they bought. They paid over
Wow.
$400 today. So, you know, that's a perfect example. And
Right.
that's not that long. It's just
It's
in the last few years.
yeah. It's that is concerning. That is really concerning. So with the possibilities of recession, and there's a discussion about what is that, how is that defined, and all of that. We do see price increases. We do see, our cost of living going up, and our wages are not. And the gap
Mhm.
there is disconcerting for people. So, and then there's small businesses. Let's jump in and talk a little bit about small businesses and what you see for the small business person, and some potential possibilities and good things and opportunities. We mentioned AI, for example, that I do
Sure.
believe that is the small business person's ally. I think large enterprises are going to suffer. In fact, we just did a show yesterday talking about the fact that um, some large players um, into it just as letting
Uh-huh.
go 1,800 people because they're They're ramping up
Wow.
with AI. And my concern is that, that's 10% of their workforce. And this is probably just the beginning. But at
Hmm.
the same time, it's an incredible opportunity for small business people to leverage tools, elegant tools that they otherwise would never have been able to activate and get work done in the course of a week they could have never gotten done in a week. But
I agree.
but what are your thoughts? You always have some interesting perspectives of small business and the opportunities there.
Well, thanks. First, I have to agree with you. We played a little bit with Chat GTP and the newer versions of that. And, there's one type, there's so many different kinds of artificial intelligence. So we're talking about generative AI. And when you think about putting those engines behind just creating a script or managing, for example, if you went and created just kind of the script for how today went, you could just turn that on and it'll
Right.
go back and create it for us rather than, spending 2 hours of typing and, the punctuation's so good and everything like that. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Again, I think the world has already changed. As far as small business, that's one minor way to take advantage of artificial intelligence. But I do see an opportunity for small business, especially if we are heading into a recession. And this comes from my experience as a regulator. One thing I did notice in the last recession, the financial crisis, was um, you know, a small business in many cases, they rely so heavily on their lines of credit. If things get tight or they're trying to hire people or the supply chain gets disrupted, they are going to need a source of liquidity to get them through a short-term
Right.
bump. And so if you only have one bank and you have a large credit line that you've not activated, so let's say you're only 10% into whatever your line is, when the risks start going up for banks and credit unions, one of the low hanging fruit that the regulators will look at and have them do is cut unused credit lines. So if you think of that and
Wow.
you're a small business, you're relying on the cost of credit based on the size of your credit lines. If those start getting cut, you could find yourself in a position where you can't have that short-term liquidity, and if you use it, it's going to cost more. So the opportunity I see is to maybe look at how many relationships you have from a banking perspective and perhaps diversify.
Right.
Bring on a couple banks. If you haven't checked out a credit union, check one out. They're really good partners, and deposits as well. You can kind of blend those deposits amongst different organizations and segregate the amount of uninsured deposits you might have. So if there's a hiccup, you can have those federally insured.
So get multiple. Make sure you're building partnerships with local banks, few of them, and are you differentiating between credit unions and a traditional bank?
I'm not. I regulated them both. I work for a credit union because I absolutely love the people I get to work with.
Nice.
We have
Okay.
such a great board of directors, and I just call it a Super Bowl team amongst the folks I get to work with. I've known a few of them for many, many years, and I just love them. Um, but I also know that community banks, they're the lifeblood of their communities, just like credit unions are. They have their missions. They have incredible, you know, relationships with the people. And you go out to some rural communities, and some of
Right.
these relationships are decades long.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love local, and then you also have that national bank. Relationship as well. You can pick and choose where you want to spend your money and where you don't.
Yeah. You get to choose where. Who you're going to do business with. That's the beauty of having your own enterprise. Is like you get to choose. You get to choose your business partners, your banker. Um, yeah, and don't be shy. You can't be shy in being in business wherever you're at in business. So tell me a bit more about just your interest in economics. And I found years ago in being involved with industry and with mapping industries and industry clusters I found it very interesting to see the economy through the eyes of it's just the study of people and
Yeah.
group dynamics and how people are functioning and responding. And the role of trade defines the world and the role of innovation. I think about you can read about the innovation of the air conditioner and
Hmm.
the transition from literally shipping blocks of ice, to the south on ships, to the air conditioner actually changing political demographics in the south because a lot of northerners moved to the south where they wanted to be. And now they could because they could air condition their homes. And so the economy to me is just a fascinating study of people.
Yeah. And I'm going to turn it around on you, my friend.
All right.
Because back in the day, you were up in the Seattle area and you had talked to me about those industry clusters. And I'm not going to let you off the hook because can you explain what that is and the synergy? Because you are onto something from an economic perspective, and I can see where it's going to feed into small business as well. But first, could you explain the exciting idea of an industry cluster for people that might not know what that is?
So industry clusters, it's the idea of a cluster where you have all these connected businesses, specifically around a specific industry. For example, if you're building boats, Seattle is world class, renowned for boat building and technologies around it. And so there's all these services within the Seattle region, the Puget Sound region, really that serve boat building. And so what's interesting is to see, boats need cushions. And so you can map out what's interesting is like, so you have all these individual boat builders that are going to, the cushion manufacturers and they're saying, hey, listen, we need cushions. And they get in line with the rest of the world, to get the cushions built. And so with the industry cluster, when you start doing strategy around industry cluster, you begin to identify the market aggregate demand and you can actually sit down and say, there's a business case for building cushions within, a certain region specifically for boats. And it's like, but if anybody, listening to this, they drive around most communities, especially communities around, the water where we lived
Sure.
in Puget Sound, there's water everywhere. And so there's all these custom upholsters in every town. And so it's like, well, why don't we just work with them? They're custom upholsterers. They're not manufacturers.
Right.
And so while they could offer some technical expertise in maybe some design and structural design of the cushions themselves, could they actually manufacture them at the rate that the Navy and these boat manufacturers need? Probably not.
No.
And so it actually warrants its own business model. And then it's like, well, who's going to design the business model? Who's going to design the business case? Who's going to do the market analysis? Well, that's where you begin to collaborate, say, with your local technical schools or your local community colleges that have students that need to go out and get business experience. And it's the whole idea of the industry cluster strategies. I call it strategic business communities.
Sure.
Is that you're evaluating your resources and you're bringing them together in a way that takes entrepreneurial thinking and you're putting together in a way that's unique to how they've been brought together before. And then you understand who's there too. Now, the beauty of that and the strength of that is that those boat manufacturers now have their own source for building the cushions. They're going to be world class, of course. They're going to capture local market. And so there's dollars there already that are being shipped out of the region and building other regions, right?
Hmm.
Because it's input
Hmm.
dollars outside of the, that Puget Sound region. And those dollars go right back into the local market. You've got jobs that are created from that, entrepreneurs that are building businesses. And, one business may just start a production line and expansion of their enterprise. So now their business just got stronger and you're just building out your industry. And
Yeah.
so I love talking about the strategic business communities because you've got endless opportunities to actually build out um, a community that's stronger and stronger all the time rather than feeling like, oh, the jobs are being depleted. But if you build your community strategically, you can work with the training organizations, the workforce development, and there's plenty of government organizations that are doing training. Their mission is to do training that could train the diesel mechanics for rural
Sure.
boat repair shops and things like that. And so it's pretty fun. It's pretty awesome because you're building small business, you're supporting small business, you're making connections that are simply there. You're capturing dollars that are just what I call the bleed. You're stopping the bleed, the economic bleed of a region, and it can be very powerful. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
cool, man. I'm sitting here trying to hold back a smile, but I get so excited about the whole idea about community and people helping people,
right,
which is another reason I love working for a credit union. It's because one of our pillars is ease of use because we know that people bring their deposits to us and they're lending it to, other members. That's what we do. And at the end of the
right,
year, we hope we're in the black and not in the red, right?
right,
So on a global basis, it's very simple, right? Be profitable, but give back. And let's say we are going into a recession and people have that industry cluster like you're talking about,
right,
and things slow down in part of the supply chain. If you know the people that you are reliant on and they are reliant on you, renegotiate things. We're
right.
so quick to like cut people off and bring the hammer, but
Mm.
in an industry cluster, if it's efficiently run like you're talking about, man, think of the help that we can be to one another in a local economy as well. It's super exciting.
Yeah. In working in aerospace and being around multiple tiers, because most companies sell into a tier one, and that tier one sells directly to the OEM in that model. When COVID hit, that was pretty ugly. I mean,
Hmm.
when they not only put the 737s on the ground, they put everybody on the ground. And I was pacing the floor saying, what if half of those planes don't go back up? What does that
Mm.
look like for the manufacturing economy? And you've got small businesses that own their machine shops and own their businesses. And what was exciting to me was talking to CEOs that were actually working very directly with suppliers, and it was like a family, and a
Hmm.
family in the sense that it's like, I need you there, and I need you to be successful. How do we work with cash flow solutions so that you survive this and I do too? And there was a lot of shifting. I saw people working twice as hard just to sustain connections
Yeah,
because new jobs, people are moving into other jobs and new people are being put into jobs. And when you're looking at real business economies, especially local or industry focused, it's all built on relationships.
absolutely.
And we're really caught up with AI and all these things, and I believe in those technologies, but I mean, you're a banker, man. You know it's all relationships.
It is. It absolutely is. You got to
So
take care of people. There's just too many alternatives out there. And I want to take care of people. I mean, it's my heart. It's the heart of the people I work with, and
right.
and it makes life worth living.
Well, and it's ultimately it's all about people in the end, anyways. I mean, when we're doing business and we're doing trade, um, you know, it's like, how am I meeting the need of my client?
Hmm.
And I know that's always been important to you. Am I providing value? And we could talk all day about value exchange, and people call that sales, but it's about relationships. And
Yeah, and
it's about a transaction ultimately, but what about the whole world around that transaction?
yeah, and you're just kind of my brain was leading into the next thing. It's not so much about the transaction, as just as important as the transaction, maybe even more important for a relationship is the
Yeah.
education. One part I've really hated about banking is most of the education that banking, the industry provides is always about credit. It's always about how to borrow,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And borrowing, I don't believe wholeheartedly in that that's the only piece of the pie. There's another part of the balance sheet which is about assets, and you
right.
need to build the asset side. So, there's good debt and there's bad debt. Good debt will help you leverage a hard asset, lower your borrowing costs so that you can grow your wealth in other ways.
Right.
And we do, I think, a lot of it's regulatory. We have to be so careful about what we tell people, because if we were wrong, there could be liability there. So um, we have to be careful. But the schools aren't teaching it, and so we want to have these discussions with our friends and families and schools, if we can get that message out about what the entire lifetime looks like, having to do with finance. It's so little to do with the transaction today, and it's about the relationship. And if we get that right, everybody will benefit.
Right. Right. Well, and I have a bit of a question for you, and that is, you know, banks have built, there's a big focus on the credit and the
Hmm.
lending, of course. But banks have historically, especially merchant banks, have historically, really relied on the prosperity of their clients to actually have those dollars. And now I know with fractal banking and all that stuff, they don't really need my prosperity. They just loan out what they have. And it multiplies for them. And so it's a very kind of a different world, but we don't get to cheat in business, you know? And,
Hmm.
and I'm intrigued with your thoughts about, you know, banks returning back or doing more work to really support and strengthen business so that if I have more liquid cash
Hmm.
because of
Hmm.
sales is always the best revenue, right? And if I have liquid cash because of sales in my bank account, isn't there a relationship where the bank gets to loan that out? That strengthens their numbers. And I mean, what's the future in that?
I don't know, but let's talk about what I think, where you're kind of going with it now is the obligation of a financial institution to help their depositors. And so, because there is a fractional reserve banking system, and what that means is, I'm going to make it really simple. If a bank has 10 cents, it can lend out $1 on that. And then
Right,
if you think about that, whoever gets that dollar, the borrower, what do they do with it? They have to go to and deposit that in another bank, right?
right,
So they get $1, and that bank can now create $10 in loans based
right,
on that fractional reserve. And that is how our debt system is based. That's how it was created. So if these dollars are the inventory of regulated financial institutions, what obligation do they have to their clients? I think that this is some of the arguments, and I don't want to get into politics.
okay,
I'm a libertarian. I complain about both parties because I'm so for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
right,
But
right.
y-
Me
but
too.
but I think there's a good argument, and it's a push and pull and a constant tug of war between politicians and the banks. Is what is a bank's obligation to give back to their communities? And I
Right,
guess it all depends on who you ask, and that's why we're going to come full circle. It's important for each of us to do our due diligence and figure out who do we want to do business with? Because at the end of the day, I don't think there is an obligation to take care of your customers, just like any business. And
mm,
so you vote with your feet, right? If you're not being treated right, if you're not having the value that you expect,
right.
go somewhere else.
Right. Well, and one of the things that's in the back of my mind after bringing up industry clusters and strategic business communities is a way to strengthen the wealth of a region. It's one of the reasons I've been so excited about it, intrigued with it, is because it's an active plan in a very pragmatic way to build wealth, period, in a region, in an industry. And it's not far flung. But I think the difficulty with the strategies is you will see if you look throughout the world, they're typically government funded and government directed,
Hmm.
which is a difficulty because you pay and you play. And if I believe with the universal law of trade, you serve whoever's paying you.
Right.
And so, if business is leading in the industry clusters, if in developing strategic business communities, if industry is leading in that, then industry has vested interest and will have long-term commitment to it. If they have
Hmm.
a strategy that makes sense to build their region. And I've always seen, you're a financial guy, you understand this stuff beyond what I can understand. Don't you see that the financial industries are a good place to garner support for that? Because the financial institutions are touching all of those businesses. We all need
Hmm.
you.
Yeah. You would think so, but I don't think they're that connected. The world is moving so fast, and if you think about it, there are some sacrifice I would think that had would have to take place in the building of efficiencies in the industry cluster, because you could always go outside that industry cluster and maybe get something faster, maybe get
Right.
something a little bit cheaper. But wouldn't it make sense to spend a little more time to help develop that manufacturer that can, create that perfect widget just the way you want to? And then you can start really building on top of that. You keep that
Right.
you keep those dollars going back and forth within the community on that supply chain till you take it to the end product to the customer. Everybody down the chain will benefit from that. And so,
Right.
yeah, I
Well,
mean, it just makes sense.
and what's interesting too is the economic multiplier. If you save a bleed in some part of some industry, if it's $1 million a month, if you save that bleed, that's 12 million a year, and then you multiply that. The workers spending that, local communities buying real estate, the businesses themselves, services, all of that.
Heck yeah.
That $12 million a year multiplies into what, 40, 50 million in
Uh,
value and revenue economically.
mhm.
It's a big deal when we're not paying attention strategically to our local economies and our local businesses. Local business, small business is a very important part of having a well-tuned economy.
Absolutely. My favorite ones to support are restaurants. Love to eat local.
Oh, right, right. Well, in my area, I'm in the Boise area, and you're in Denver, right?
Yeah, I live in a suburb of Denver, right between Denver and Boulder, called Arvada, and it's home for me. I love living here.
Very good, very good. Well, this has been a great time, Chris. I know we're going to be talking again in the future. And do you have any parting wisdom for our
No.
audience?
No, the only wisdom I can impart to the audience, tune in again, because this guy Dale, he's got great ideas and an expansive thinker and a super nice person. So I'm super excited for you, my friend, and I'm so humbled and appreciative of being able to be with you today.
You're very kind. You're very kind. All right. Well, that's it for today, folks. Thanks for coming to the Dale King Show. And Chris, we'll see you again soon.